The longest journey a person will ever take in their life, the hardest, longest, most difficult journey, is to drop from here 13 inches to the south and end up here, to the heart mind.
Where we're just fighting over everything, gay, straight, black, white, Republican, Democrat. I know we live in duality, but where did it get so ugly?
Because it has to go through its death cycle to be born again. Poop, pee, cry, sweat as much as you can during that time.
Listen, illness starts with inflammation. Inflammation starts with toxicity. You remove the toxicity, the inflammation goes away, and you're strong and healthy.
The Power of Your Voice with Mike Murphy starts now.
Welcome, everybody, to the Power of Your Voice podcast. And I'm your host, Mike Murphy, and I'm super excited that you're here today, especially for this show. Today, we're going to be spending a lot of time with a real medicine man. Not a medical doctor, but a medicine man. And the difference is, this Western medicine that we practice in today's world's only been around for a little bit over 100 years. And prior to that, all medicine was done through the work of medicine men. Every tribe or every community had a medicine man. And it wasn't really till we started practicing this Western style of really pharmacology. Today's medicine is all about writing prescriptions and not really getting to the root cause. And all these pharmaceuticals, they come from nature. They come from plants and flowers and things like this. And then they take the molecules and they synthesize them so that they can then get a patent and then they can sell them and make money. The truth of the matter is all that stuff's available in the jungle and the forest and the deserts. Everything we need is already there. And they just found a way to get our money. And if it's interesting. I was just reading this morning. There's only 2 countries in the world where you can advertise these drugs on television. Only 2 countries in the world where you can advertise Viagra or hypertension medicine, or if your foot's moving in the middle of the night medicine. And it's interesting, If you listen to those commercials, they each have like 20 side effects. It's a 30-second commercial, and 20 seconds is filled with what could happen to you. And how do they know what could happen to you? Because that's what happened to the people in the trials. Okay, so if you really analyze all this, and I think, I'm not trying to be negative against Western medicine. Hey, if I'm in a car accident, I want to be in the United States and go to an ER there, okay? And I like to look at it this way. There's 3 top leading causes of death in America. Number 1 is heart disease. Number 2 is cancer. And number 3 is medicine, okay? Either taking the wrong drugs or something goes wrong at the hospital in the surgery. So it's not an exact science, but I'm always flabbergasted how we trust it so much. I've worked a lot with people with cancer in my life, and I have a very dear friend battling cancer right now, and it's a very difficult battle he's going through right now. And so I look at this, and then, of course, we had this pandemic a couple of years ago, and it's coming back, it looks like, and how we just put our blind trust into people just because they have a butcher coat on and a stethoscope around their neck. But the truth of the matter is, when they go to their 4 or 5 years of medical school, they're only getting like 3 or 4 hours of nutrition. And I always wonder, well, what's more important than what I put in my body, what I eat, what I drink, and what I think about? And they don't spend a lot of time with that. So I'm excited today to have a real live medicine man, and his name is Raven. And Raven, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm super happy to be here. I'm currently in Uruguay, just outside of Montevideo, doing a little clean retreat with Dr. Alejandro Younger, who has developed he's a cardiologist who went through the same discovery that Western medicine is just not healing people.
Right.
And so he pretty much left his practice and became a holistic nutritionist, and was focusing on the detoxification programs and the cleaning out and focusing on the large intestine and the small intestine as the places where all of our immune system comes from. And that's what's getting most damaged by today's medicine and industrial lifestyle.
And the food, right? The glyphosate on the wheat. And,
Yeah,
every time
yeah,
I go out to dinner with someone, it's, can I have a gluten-free menu, gluten-free menu? And it's really not the gluten as much as it's the glyphosate that's really
yeah,
poison. When I was a kid and my dad would have me go pull the weeds out of the garden, he'd give me a bottle of Roundup and I would just spray the weeds and they'd be gone 2 or 3 days later. They would die because it's poison. Well, that's what they put on our
yeah.
food today. So tell me, I believe that your tribe that you come from is the Hopi tribe.
I come from a mix. Come from the Hopi and then from the Mexica. The Hopi are kind of southern United States,
Right.
and the Mexica are centralized in Mexico. And I have ties to the kind of the whole Mesoamerican central place around the using the calendar, the this calendar that changes, that life is different, follows different time signatures. There's a 13-day week instead of a 7-day week. This often known as the Mayan calendar. I've kind of structured my life around that for my ancestors. And since I've done that, it's actually aligned me in a much different way, because you can align yourself chemically, right? And that's our foods and the medicines that we take and the plants, and that's all chemical. And an aspect of that also being the kind of electromagnetic and electrical and this other kind of energy that we speak of. And then there are frequencies running through the planet that are kind of lunar, stellar, cellular relationships, very much in relationship to the moon. I mean, the moon pulls our tides and we're mostly water.
Yes.
So I try to follow that calendar. I don't know if it's Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday today, but I know what day it is on the Mayan calendar. So
What day is it? What day is it in the Mayan calendar?
so today would be a day. So there's a couple different aspects to this old calendar in which it runs on a frequency, which gives you what number it is. So today would be an 8-day, and then the energy would be the energy of, let's see, yesterday was Sikin, and then we did. So today I believe would be the energy of Tsi. So
The energy of what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
it's called the Nawal. The Nawal would be the Nawal of Tsi, and there's 20 different kind of day lords that run the cycle of time, and they kind of, each day lord represents different aspects of consciousness, of plant and animal energy, and it has all of these different frequencies that correspond with that frequency number. And it's a huge, if you ever look at the Mayan calendar, it's like incredible mathematics. NASA invited a bunch of Mayan elders and Hopi elders and indigenous elders to to NASA back in the late 80s, early 90s, to ask them questions about how they knew what they knew, because it was impossible for them to know what they know thousands of years ago, let alone present day, because of the math. And our scientists only started to figure out stuff with microscopes, with accelerators, and with the Hubble telescope. So yeah, it's pretty fabulous.
So it's my understanding that the Mayan calendar ended December 21st, 2012. Is that accurate?
No, that around the later part of the 20th century, kind of a lot of people started going down and studying with, a lot of people are familiar with Jose Aguilas and different people that kind of started incorporating and translating the Mayan calendar in a different way. And it turned into this calendar called the Mayan Dream Spell. And a lot of people and all the books and all the movies and all of the stuff that happened at that time was kind of commercialized, westernized, and brought about as this December 12th, 2021 marks the end of times, and it's all going to end. And there was a lot of, there was so much hoopla about that. Right. But if you go talk to a Mayan elder, or you go to where Guatemala is still 80% indigenous people.
Wow.
Right? It's 80% living in the tradition of their ancestry. And a lot of them are geeks, or, they keep this ancient tradition. It's really living down there. And you go talk to them and they're like, no, that's a bunch of BS, actually. And what it is, though, it is marking a particular time that began on December 21st, 2012 through December 21st, 2032. that marks a very specific Baktun, this time signature of 20 years in which the world would experience a great change. Now, maybe end of the world, maybe not, maybe end of an old system, maybe, we are in the middle of a mass extinction event. Plastic is polluting everything. People are getting more sick. There's all of these danger, glyphosates all over the planet. That's a massive toxicity very few people are talking about. Whatever these things are, our ancestors saw and recorded this, and it's in the calendar, and it's not only in the calendar of the Mayans. I had the pleasure of talking with an amazing gentleman who's an archaeoastronomer, and he was there with the Mayans conversing about how he not only studies the Mayan pyramids. He was telling me, and he presented to the Mayans conversed with him about this incredible link that all temples on all of planet Earth have, where all the sacred places, the pyramids in Egypt, in the Syrian temples, all this stuff, they all point at astrological places. And his curiosity was, why? Why are they all doing that? What are they all telling us? Is it particular to that tribe or that region? And I was in Guatemala on top of one of the pyramids at a very particular time where we were witnessing a very particular constellation. And what he shared with the Mayan elders in conjunction, and they all agreed, was that all the temples on Earth are actually pointing at this time. They've left us like a guidebook or a map that says, you have to pay attention to what happens now.
Wow.
Because you're either going to make it through this time period or you're not. And that's where you're at as a species. And I know that our ancestors recorded other times that this happened. We're entering the fifth world. This had happened 4 times before. Yeah. So that's really what it actually was.
So we're basically halfway through this. We're a little over halfway through this 20-year time period that everything's pointing at right now. Is that right?
Correct.
And you
Correct.
know, and I'm sure you sense it. I sense it. Something's going on. Okay. And I think you said it best, that all the old systems are breaking and they're being exposed, and a new light is being shed, and people are waking up to, whoa, that's bull. What about this? And I think there is a big transitioning going on right now. Let me ask you this. You brought up the fact that NASA invited the Mayans over and say, hey, how do you guys know all this? How do you have these mathematics? The pyramids in Egypt, I mean, they're saying we don't have the technology to build those today. You look at Machu Picchu, you look at the Mayans, Atlantis, Lemuria. What happened? Obviously there was great intelligence here, right? And then we went through the Dark Ages, and now I think we are coming into a new period of enlightenment, a different kind of enlightenment, more of heart-based consciousness evolving. And what do you think's going on?
Well, it's funny. I had this conversation yesterday. We were standing by the fire because we did this opening fire, and there's a big shift going on right now. Right now, everybody wants to awaken. Everybody wants to learn more. Everybody wants to take care of, everybody wants to understand their lineage and their history, and people are hungry. And I wouldn't say everybody. There's a lot of the planet that just wants to make money, and that's fine. We're not talking about those people right now, and that's fine. That's an aspect of consciousness, and I'm not going to say, like you say about the pharmaceutical world, that's just an aspect that it's neither good or bad. It's doing what it's doing. There's results that we can see what it's doing to the human body. But anybody who takes a cursory glance goes, yeah, that ain't great. However, if we come from an overall perspective, what we're watching, as the Mayans knew, because they were known throughout antiquity, the Egyptians and the Celts and the Hindus knew that the Mayans were the keepers of time. That's what they were really good at. So during the fire yesterday, we were talking about it. I got asked the same question, like, why the darkness? Why this awful kind of destructive quality? And what we're looking at is what is commonly understood as waveform, right? You have a wave, and the whole universe is just a movement of waves of energy that particleize at one point, but those waves are what is the sustenance of all movement in the universe. And you have a peak and you have a trough, and that's just the way it is. And what we're looking at is cycles of time, cycles of being awake, cycles of being asleep. The Hindus call it the Yuga cycles, and right now we are in the Kali Yuga, which is the destructive end time cycle, because it has to go through its death cycle to be born again. And if you look at biological life on the planet, same thing. I mean, from the first organisms that were on Earth, the first single-cell blue-green algae that lived in the oceans, proliferated, became extraordinarily successful in a toxic environment after the massive destructive qualities that it took to make life. The Earth was filled with dangerous gases and carbon dioxide. And guess what? This life form came along that knew how to breathe and eat that. And the oceans became full of this incredible algae. And until what happened? They pooped themselves out of existence. They shut themselves out. It's just, a friend of mine says, if you're number one on this planet, you're going to die and you're number two. That's just what happens. And so they pooped out too much oxygen and they couldn't breathe it. And so most of the algae in the ocean died off. It gave way to the rise of an oxygen-rich atmosphere. And now our entire civilization since that time, every life form that's come since then is what we're looking at. And now what are we doing? We're breathing out too much carbon dioxide because we're digging up all those dead algae bodies, which is literally crude oil. All of that algae has turned into the fuel that fuels our civilization, and it just goes in rhythms of time. This succeeds, this dies, and then it goes and it feeds the next system, and you can see it in the shale record. This other friend, genius, I love talking with him, he calls it the upward collapse of history. You can see it in the shale record. A system comes, and it goes, and it rises, and then it collapses, and then it's stuck there, and then you have the next. And we are feeding off of the dead bodies of what we call our ancestors. Those original cellular organisms are our ancestors, and they are giving us the fuel. They're burning, they're giving us the energy to move this precarious lifestyle, and we're reaching the end of that, where we are so successful as an organism on planet Earth that we are destroying everything else. And that's what, in a way, biology does. And as an aspect of that, consciousness in relationship to it has to match that, especially in our own kind of meta intelligence, where we see the end. We know something, we can see the end of, we talk about peak oil, and our technologies aren't strong enough to save us from the thing yet. We don't know, so we're just consuming still rampantly, because a lot of people say we're kind of participating in a collaborative, collective mass suicide, with everything that we eat and we take and we consume, and we turn a blind eye because we don't know what to do about it, because it is a movement of time.
Yeah.
Right. And that movement of time in biology and biochemistry and archaeology and all these things, what happens when something dies? It's born again in another phase.
Yep. Yeah, I look at it like this. If you and I were to walk through the forest today, half of it is dead and half of it is alive and thriving. And if we came back 100 years from now and we walk through the same forest, the other half is now dead and the other half is now thriving. So it's a big circle. But what I kind of see is that we got ourselves into this mess because of lack of consciousness, a lot of unconsciousness, a lot of chasing stuff that doesn't feed the heart and the soul, just feeds the carnal in us, right? Because we're duality. And so therefore, as a result of going so unconscious and almost destroying ourselves and our planet, consciousness is evolving and rising at a really good pace. And more people are getting into that. And I think when you talk about in these next, now we're down to 9 years, in these next 9 years, the ones that make it through, I believe, are going to usher in a new consciousness based on community and unity and responsibility and integrity. And the other systems is just going to fall by the wayside. So with that said, and with your background, the Mayans and the Hopis and all that, I have a feeling that those people were united and they didn't have the division that we find in the world today. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what is with all this division? Why is there so much hate? It seems to be like we're at these crossroads right now where, especially in America, you know, where we're just fighting over everything, you know, gay, straight, black, white, Republican, Democrat. I mean, you know, I know we live in duality, but where did it get so ugly?
Well, I think it's, again, it relates to this kind of time period, right? The Hindus called it the Kali Yuga, the age of destruction, the age of darkness, and these cycles of time in which they told us you have, and it'll be this mark, this 20-year window, as far as they could see, in which you guys will either get your stuff together and figure out where to go and blossom a new level of consciousness, or it'll reset. The planet will wipe you out. You guys will wipe yourselves out, and you'll go by the wayside. And that's just what happens. And so what we're now coming to is this choice, right? It's like we're becoming autonomous, and we're realizing that we have our own personal authority and our own personal autonomy. And it's now no longer the fault of the church or the priest or the king or the government, or, you know, we've been kind of suppressed and supplanted for thousands of years now.
Yeah.
We've been told that we are less than.
Yes.
And so that creates a kind of internalized pressure and kind of self-hatred. And the problems that we see now, this collapse of like black, white, gay, straight, female, not female, male, you know, all of this stuff is really internalized around generations of self-hatred and this feeling of worthlessness that only the few people on the planet have any worth. But what I see is happening now is that's flipping, right? So there's always the smallest percent of change happens in the tiniest group of people, that less than 1%, that aggregates and transforms the system. If we go back to the model of the blue-green algae, the single-cell algae in the ocean, what ended up happening is these single-cell organisms realized they couldn't breathe oxygen on their own. So what did they do? They got together, they collaborated, they unified biologically, and they started forming the first organelles that could breathe oxygen. They could form the first systems that could use the new environment to survive. And I can guarantee you it wasn't all pretty and easy like in the animation videos around evolutionary biology. It wasn't the fish walked out of the water. Right. It was a hard, nasty attempt at breathing something that they could not breathe. And so I think that's where we're at. Our consciousness plays a secondary factor where we start fighting. It's kind of this feeling where we have cognitive dissonance around so much information that what it does is it creates polarization. And it creates, well, what side's right? Who's doing the right thing? Am I And we're externalizing, we're continuing this last vestige of externalizing our power to some other idea, motif, way of dress, colors that we wear on our flag, the month that celebrates this, the day that celebrates that, the rightness or wrongness behind it. We get behind these externalized ideas, and it causes further cognitive dissonance in our own individual autonomy and biology, and we're fighting for attention or rightness or wrongness, and it further polarizes a system that's already cataclysmic. And I think, and you know, a lot of people may not want to hear this, but that final cataclysmic fight, that element, might be the very thing that sets fire to the system that very much needs to die, so that it can transform, burn away the forest. We know that every once in a while when a forest burns, it's absolutely great, the forest. And whether that's a figurative burning or a burning of ideas or societal standards, whatever it is, a cleaning is definitely what needs to happen. And I think you know this very clearly in the body, with helping people get to heal when they have incredible diseases that the old model is definitely not working. Just retoxify them to kill cells. Doesn't work. How about we clean them out, just flush them out, reset the internal biology, reset the mental space, reset the heart space. And I think that's the big journey right now, is getting out of here, the fighting, the pollution that's up here, dropping 13 inches down, I had I believe it was a Lakota elder tell me once, the longest journey a person will ever take in their life, the hardest, longest, most difficult journey, and he wasn't kidding, he's like, this is going to be hard, is to drop from here 13 inches to the south and end up here, to the heart mind.
Yep.
You know, prior to the 1600s, you ask somebody, where is your mind? They didn't point up here.
Right.
They pointed here.
Right.
You know, and that's, and as long as we stay up here fighting and trying to make sense of the mess, it's going to keep us from dropping down, but it also might push us to have to drop down. Yep. And so that's why I think that kind of peak, that intense opposition of forces, again, what happens when you put carbon under an intense amount of pressure? You end up with diamonds, you end up with jewels. Right? Yeah. And a lot, like without resistance, there would be no flight. The birds would have never taken. Our biology itself would never have developed without the resistance through gravity, through intensity, we are a product of a very difficult life in our history. Yeah. Right. And we forgot about that. And now all everybody wants is comfort.
Yes.
You know, and as long as there's comfort, we're going to weaken. And that might be the kind of culling that we need on Earth, because all biological systems go through it. You know, the herd gets culled by the lion that hunts. And viruses and bacteria might be our lion that culls away. You know, Western medicine is so interested in prolonging life. Yeah, we have a longevity cycle now, much longer than previously in human history, but they're on 15 different kinds of medications. Right.
Yes.
65% of Americans are chronically ill. 85% of those 65% have 4 or more chronic diseases. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be alive, sustained by machines and pills, because I'm afraid to go in my natural journey through time.
Yes. And the truth of the matter is we can't die anyways. We're energy. We are eternal, timeless consciousness.
We're eternal.
We came into this form, this human form, and we're going to leave this human form, and we're going to be non-form, and then we're going to become form again. It's all one big cycle. But, you know, what you were talking about, moving from the head to the heart, you know, that's one of my favorite subjects. And it's something that every one of you is going to do someday. Okay, I just sat with my dad at his deathbed about 18 months ago, and my dad had closed his heart so tight that nothing was going to get in there, right? And in the last hour of his life, where he was barely conscious, I wasn't even sure if he was conscious, I just started pouring love into this man who honestly was a very difficult father, and I'm sure I was a difficult child, and we butted heads a lot. And for the last hour of his life, while I was laying on his deathbed, literally, I just poured my heart and my soul and my love into him. And about halfway through, his right eye opened and tears started to pour down, okay? Because he was he was moving from here to here in the last hour of his life. Why wait? He was here. He was here for 87 years. How many years did he take from me that we could have had that bond, which is the only real bond we'll ever have with one another, right? This is all bullshit. I call it the insane asylum. And this is who we really are. You know, from here, I can't take advantage of you. I can't manipulate you. I can't steal from you. Here, I can do all that stuff and more. So it just makes total sense. Now, you brought up something about detox. Okay, so now we'll go into the fact that you're coming to Mountains of Hope in Medellin, Colombia in a couple of weeks, 10 days, 12 days, whatever it is. And I don't think
it's pretty close.
And you haven't been there before, have you? The Mountains of Hope?
No.
Okay.
No, I've been in and out of Colombia for the last 15 years, studying and working with the medicine people of the Northern Amazon, the Colombians, the Daitas. But I have not been there.
Okay. Well, you're going to come to Mountains of Hope in a little short period of time here, and we are going to do some special ceremonies with you as our medicine man. And one of the ceremonies we're going to do, let's start with the first day, which is you call a fire ceremony. Can you? And I'll give you the broad overview. He's going to come here for 6 days, and we're going to do a fire ceremony, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then we're going to take some medicine from a frog, medicine or poison, I'm not sure which, from a frog for
Well,
3
it's a
days.
poison.
Yeah,
It's
and
very clearly a poison.
and we're going to detox, and we're going to use some tobacco, and then we're going to use some psilocybin and some mushrooms at the end. But let's talk about what we're going to do that week, because I've never done it myself, and I'm excited and apprehensive. I watched the documentary that Dr. Younger and you and Dr. Khan, I believe, was in that as well. So it was very fascinating to see a medicine man with ancient traditions using plant medicines or even poisons from a poisonous frog from the Amazon, and having two cardiologists, okay, one actually going and doing the medicine that had a heart problem from an accident, and another cardiologist advising him, yeah, go for it. And it was just fascinating because I have a bit of a heart problem myself, and I'm getting ready to do this experience with you. But I am so excited to do it for deeper healing, deeper cleaning, deeper detox, a deeper reset, and more moving from here to here and opening this even more, even though it might be uncomfortable at times. I'm willing to go through that to grow and evolve and become the best version of myself. So walk us through what we're going to do in a couple of days.
Yeah, and that transformation, I just want to kind of say a little bit about that and what you said before about us not dying.
Yeah.
To come with it very factually, I was in a physics conference, and the physics is changing. There's like radical physicists out there doing crazy stuff, and I was in a physics conference with this kind of new unified field physicists and these old Newtonian physicists, and they were arguing for a half hour, and it was pretty great. It was pretty great. And at the end, they started to see, the people were like, this old physicist was stuck in these Newtonian models, was like, okay, you're right, I'm seeing that. And through that, in that conversation somewhere, we started talking about life itself. And he said, from a physics point of view, and which is reality, we have never, ever, ever in the history of anything seen anything die. All we see is something disorganize and reorganize into something else.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all we've ever seen. Now, there's an emotional attachment, which is the entire foundation of Buddhism, is to help us get over that emotional attachment that makes life suffering, because we attach to one form, transforming into another. And so these medicines, in particular this week, what I've learned over years and decades of training, and from the Indian traditions, the Chinese traditions, the African traditions, the North American Indians, the South American Indians, the Siberian traditions. I've worked with a lot of different people that have taught me a lot of different things. And I've had the great fortune to meet and work with a lot of amazing medicine people. That's what this week is about. It's about transforming and allowing your body to go from one phase state to another. In the exact same way that water moves from a liquid to a solid to a gas, and now the fourth stage of water that they're talking about, which is really beautiful, when you look at this gel state that it's in, and then it goes back into water. So there's these 4 stages of water. We're mostly water. If we allow ourselves to kind of move through these different stages more fluidly, if we followed our atomic nature,
Right.
in life, love, relationships, and everything, we would be an advanced civilization.
Yeah.
But we operate from this tiny little point in our brain that is about this much space and is about a fraction of the entire operating system, and we focus all of our identity, all of our ego on that, right?
Which is based
And
on
so
fear,
this
which is
week-
also based on fear, which causes all these problems.
Yeah. The left prefrontal cortex is specifically designed to work with the limbic system to preserve the identity.
Right.
Right. And through evolutionary biology, advance us enough and make us strong enough to preserve our identity. And here we are at the peak of that preservation. And what we find at the peak of that preservation is neurosis. You take the identity as far as you go, and it becomes neurotic. That's where it wins. And that's like, hey, how about we just let's skip that part, you know.
Yeah.
And so this ceremony is really a death practice, a transformation practice, entering these, as you mentioned, yes, uncomfortable states. If you weren't, worried about it a little bit, going like, oh, trepidatious about it, I would be concerned, because then the self is being confronted by its own mortality, its own addictions, its own identities. And in order to heal yourself of any of these sicknesses, cancers, autoimmune deficiencies, pain problems, all of these things that our body seems to be attacking us with. I hear that a lot. I just feel like my body has betrayed me. I feel like my body is turned on me, especially with these autoimmune deficiencies or autoimmune
Or
systems.
cancer. Cancer is primary too.
Yeah, cancer. Yeah, my body is attacking me.
Right.
Okay, why is that happening? I remember I had a client that I worked with, and I speak very plainly with people, and he was kind of being treated traditionally and not doing well, and pretty much going closer and closer to death. And somebody said, "Hey, why don't you come work with this medicine man?" And one of the first things I said to him is that your cancer is, in a way, your own responsibility. You have, and not consciously, usually it's an unconscious set of circumstances. And oftentimes it's not by an act of commission, but rather omission, right? I didn't think about the food I was eating. I didn't think about the water. I didn't live in an environment that was happy with my heart. I didn't marry the right person. All of that, I did these choices because I thought this was the right thing to do. And he called me after that. He's like, that was really irresponsible, kind of making me responsible for my sickness. And I was like, well, the reason I make you responsible for your sickness is because that's the only way you're going to make yourself responsible for your health, for your healing. Yeah. And he eventually came to do the medicine, kind of very angrily. And he's he's still hanging out with his kids when he had a terminal sentence.
Well, the truth from my standpoint, I teach this creation frequency thing that we're all creators, right? And what you were all you were doing is saying, hey man, you're not a victim. Own this. Own everything in your life, and now you're the creator of your life, and now you can fix everything that's wrong in your life, right? But when you're a victim, you have no power. When you're a creator, you are all powerful. And so I know how difficult that conversation is to have. Say, yes, you are responsible for all of this. Even though you might be a victim somewhere, somehow, you still chose how you responded to that event, right? Which led you to this place. So listen, I'm not shaming or blaming anybody out there. I have the same problems. I'm as human as anybody, right? But when I own when I own that, okay, now I get my power back, and now I love playing a victim, okay? I mean, my dad was the greatest victim of all time. He programmed me to be a victim, right? So that's my biggest struggle, is realizing I'm not no matter what's going on, I'm not a victim. I created it. Now I can own it, and now I can fix it and change it. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
So keep going.
No, there was zero interruption there. I think this dialogue is so important. The work that you do, the work that I do, the work that I'm doing here with Dr. Younger is so important to right now be on repeat.
Yeah.
On repeat. And you get excited and I get excited because we know that this is what's exciting.
Right.
And and people out there will hear this and be like, okay, all right, let's go get excited about maybe, staying up all night and poisoning ourselves with frog and taking some, like, all right, let's do it. And so what happens during the course of the program in this way that has, I'd like to say I designed it. I didn't design it. The plants and the medicines designed it. The animals designed it. All I've done is kind of come do what they've asked me to do after working with them for a long period of time. And so there's a kind of quite simple outline, is that we gather together first, and we focus all of our intention because intention only goes to a certain place. Everybody talks about intention, and we all know the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So we take those attentions and then we literally throw them in the fire. You know what? Take that intention and throw it out and let your heart, not your mind, direct you into what is actually going to happen in terms of action. And so the fire is a beautiful offering from the tradition of the Mayan people. And that fire kind of, in that fire, I teach the participants to start working with the most basic elemental forces of fire, earth, air, and water. Let's just start there. Let's, all of the ancient traditions, that's where you started, right? You get to know water, you get to know your fire, you get to know your earth, and you get to know your air. You get to know your fire, which is your central electrical chemistry, your DNA, all of the energy that's running through your body, and your heart is our fire. You get to look at your water. There's 9 waters in the body that account for the blood and the lymphatic system and the saliva and all of these waters. You get to know your waters. Okay? Get to know your earth. Get to know the bones and the minerals and the things that are generated, that have literally grown out of the planet. And then get to know your air, get to know your breath, get to know your breathing. And we put that kind of centralized energy by learning how to make these altars, which are just basically a focus point of these energies. And then we do an offering fire. And as I mentioned earlier, today's day is 8, which is called Beleheb Toch. I think I might have said C before, but it's Toch. It's Beleheb Toch. And Toch is the day lord, the guiding energy for today is the offering, is not to always focus on what I can get, but to focus on what can I offer, right? And that's the exact opposite of Western civilization. Now, modern Western civilization, just pop on Instagram for 15 seconds, is what can I get? What can I get? How can I get a better body? How can I get a better this? How can I get a better that? How can I get to that? How can I get? It's still get, I think the numbers have changed since I was studying this, but I remember when I was first getting into all of this stuff, the detail was that Americans were something like 3% of the world's population using 75% of the world's resources. Right. This is in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And I've told this to people, and I've said, look, you are programmed to be an unconscious consuming machine that wants. And people are, no, I'm not. I'm gonna right. Nobody wants to confront that. I'm like, you're gonna tell me you were raised in a culture that consumes 75% of the world's resources for 3% of the world's population, and that's not going to be inherent in your genetic expression at this time? And they're like, yeah, maybe I better look at that. And it causes some real people have looked at that going, oh my God, I was raised in this time period. It's changed now because India and China
are in the same boat. They're the same. They're consumers too. They're
coming. It's I think Alan Watts, one of my favorite.
Yeah, I love him.
Philosophers.
Yeah.
He called it the indefinite Los Angelesization of planet Earth. That if that succeeds, we're not going to make it past 2023.
Exactly right.
Right, and so now everybody wants what the TV has promised them.
Right.
And it's not going so well. So instead of what do I get?
What can I offer?
The first ceremony is like, hey, what do you have to offer? What do you have to give? What do you have to give away? That giveaway might be the most powerful thing in the universe is your attention. Attention, where attention flows, right? Everything grows.
Energy goes, yeah.
Yeah. And so we learn to give our attention. We learn to give, and then we also, in that time, have a space to hey, why don't I give away this victim mentality? Why don't I give away my cancer? Why don't I give away my pain? And the fire becomes a door or a portal where we sweetly give it away. We don't cast it out, kind of the exorcism style. The sickness is going to have another place to go because the sickness, believe it or not, appeared to try and protect you. Mm-hmm. Protect you from what it thought your body could not face.
Right.
And usually it's an extreme amount of pain or anger that is being stored in your body, sadness. And so disease pops up so that you don't have to deal with the sadness and the pain, and you just have to deal with the cancer. It's like an overprotective mother in a way.
Yeah.
Our biology is billions of years old.
Right.
Our psychology, a couple 100,000 years, maybe max, more like 50,000 years.
Let me ask you
So-
this. What about spirituality? How old is it? Because that's timeless.
Yeah, well, we were talking about this here at the retreat too, because I hear a lot of like mind, body, spirit, right? And the way I see it is kind of like this weird upside down pyramid where spirit's the kind of epicenter between the two, an equilateral triangle, and body and mind are just spirit in action. And we all think that spirit is kind of a superfluous kind of, I'll deal with that later. My connection with God or the universe or nature is secondary. But anybody who's ever healed from anything deeply has come to understand that the world of their heart, their connection with nature, their connection with God, their connection with the true experience of God, not what's written in the books, not conceptual reality, but the physical reality. What's that saying? Everything is just a rumor until you experience it in your body, right? The world is populated with rumors. But when you get into that to me is spiritual. So people say, oh, you seem very spiritual. Oh, I'm super spiritual. What? Because you wear hemp necklaces and like burn some incense and practice yoga,
Right.
and yet you still act like an asshole all day?
Right.
No, I don't find you very spiritual at all. I actually, to be quite honest, I stay away from almost every spiritual community that I've ever come across. I find them to be predominantly for Instagram these days.
Yeah.
And mostly pretty vapid and full of kind of like show. So spiritual isn't what you kind of show off to the world. And you know, Jesus and Buddha both said this: meditate and pray in a corner away from everybody.
Exactly. And take care of the children. And take care of the children. Be like a child.
And take care of the children, take care of the family, make food, take care of the elders. That's where you're at. That's what you got to do.
Pretty simple recipe for happiness.
Yeah. And quit trying to control everything, basically.
Yep.
You know, because a lot of people are out there kind of trying to control everything to make it better, and it makes it worse. You know, we've seen that. And so spirituality, I think, is the and that's a lot what happens during these fires. A lot of times people come and they're sick or they have like really intense problems, and just at the fire, taking no externalized medicine. It's just, we build this beautiful mandala together. It's according to the calendar and the moon cycles and the energies, and it's an offering, and people bring, you know, candles and sugar and beeswax and incense, and you're like, wow. And then we get there and people are like, wait, we're gonna burn all this stuff, right? We're gonna burn the food? Like, yeah, we're gonna do it. And that offering is the releasing so that it can transform into the next state, and the next state being air and the carbon and the water, and how it transforms.
Yep.
Yeah, it falls to the earth. And so that is usually a very powerful spiritual kind of opening. The door kind of opens there for people. You're like, okay, I don't know what happened here, but I'm been crying for 4 hours.
Right.
So something's happening.
Yeah. Okay. Then we go to day 2.
Then we go to day 2, and basically we wake up in the morning and we kind of reestablish the circle. We kind of keep those altars that we made surrounding the fire, air, earth, and water, and we bring those to where we're going to be doing our work, because they're now like doors. And we say that, you know, they're like doors in the cycle of these ceremonies. And this is why it's very important when working with psychedelics or any medicine. In the elder traditions, you know, they say door in, door out. You come in the same door and you go out the same door. In here, you get transformed, and you might come out with less stuff and all these things, but you want to come out in the same, because I think this is the psychedelic model that terrifies people.
Yeah.
Where they go in and what happens if I eat some mushrooms and I'm crazy forever?
Right.
A lot of times what's happened what that is that the person went in and the doors were not held by the ceremony, by the caretaker, or they just took some at a party, and it's usually somebody just taking at a house party or at a concert. And so many doors get opened, and so many streams of consciousness populate a consciousness that was stuck on one channel for 30 years, 20 years, whatever. And those doors, that ceremony, those altars, those doors weren't kept. And too much information enters the brain at once. They're not guided back. And then they're overpopulated, and they can just seem like they've gone bananas. But it hasn't stimulated bananas. It's released all of the toxicity and chaos going on in the brain, but without the guidance to return to this frequency. Because we still want to integrate that world and operate it here so that this world can help transform the craziness that's going on here.
It's not about becoming someone different. It's becoming the best version of yourself. Detoxing, getting rid of the bullshit, opening up to a deeper spirit, and moving more into the heart. But you're still going to be the same person. You're just going to be better.
Yeah, it's still you.
Yeah.
Because, and you'd be. It amazes me how many people fight for their diseases. They're like,
because they're identified, because they've identified with it.
Correct. And they believe if they get rid of their bipolar, or if they get rid of their obesity,
who am I going to be?
Or if they get rid of their heart disease, or they get rid of their cancer,
what happens?
I don't want to lose my. But I like who I am. Sort of. Yeah. Enough. Right? I don't want to lose my creativity. No, what's going to happen is that creativity or that identity that you are is going to skyrocket in its expressive potential. Because the potential is there. You're just going to remove all this shit, and you're going to go, and you're just going to radiate more with more efficacy.
All right. We only got about 8 minutes. So now we got to talk about the frog.
Okay. Wow. We're already here. Okay. That was quick.
We're 50 minutes into this.
Right. Okay. So we jump from there. We go to the ceremony. We move into 3 days with the Phyllo medusa bicolor. Often it's the giant monkey frog, it's called scientifically. But in the Amazon, it's called the Kambo frog. Kambo. And it is the frog that basically saved the indigenous people from sickness brought by the conquistadors. And it hasn't been used for like ayahuasca has been in the cycle for thousands of years.
Right.
Kambo only a couple hundred years. And basically what happened was, according to the story, the diseases came, these medicine elders did not know how to deal with tuberculosis and herpes and
smallpox.
All of these things. Yeah, smallpox. And so they asked the ayahuasca, and the ayahuasca said, go to this place, sing this song, do this, the frog will come, take the frog, take the secretion from its back and from its belly, go home, burn the skin of your people. That's the only way you can do it. Put it on those superficial burns. It just burns the epidermis. Put it on. They'll purge. They'll cleanse. They'll be sick, and the sickness will come out. Do it 3 days within a moon cycle. Have them drink as much as 3 liters of water per ceremony, 3 times within a moon cycle, and they will be vaccinated with the power of the jungle and the mother. Because this poison then turns into a cleanser, but it has over 14 active peptides that bind to our peptides and do all kinds of things. Pain relief, anti-inflammatories, one of the most powerful anti-inflammatories, and it just causes your body to purge. One of them causes it's a smooth muscle contractor. All of the organs just start squeezing, and that's the discomfort. It's like, whoa, I'm squeezing stuff out. The organs that have been storing all of these toxins, the liver has been storing all these toxins and through lipogenesis, because it can't deal anymore, it just takes it and stuffs it in fat. All of that starts breaking down, and you just purge it out. So it's a rapid and effective detox, because then it doesn't linger in your body, it just comes out. You poop, pee, cry, sweat as much as you can during that time. And you do this for 3 days. So that's the ordeal quality of it. Like, I don't really want to do this. And then for a very
How
long,
long does the purging last?
it can be normally for 90% of the people, it's between 20 and 45 minutes.
And
That's about it.
what's going on mentally and emotionally during the physical purging?
Absolute presence. You can't be anywhere except the pain and the extraordinary awful, because it's confrontational. You're it's super cellular. That's one of the reasons I love this medicine. You're not any you're cellular, you're in your own shitty cellular biology. You're like, oh wow, I'm actually this human stuck I'm here. And you confront that. And on the transition on the third day, once you make it through the god awful aspect of being human, you come to the enlightened state of wow, my cellular biology is the process through which I find God. These cells are God. And that's one of the reasons I loved it, because you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to change channels. You go full channel cellular.
Well, and the truth of the
So
matter is, we're made up of around 50 trillion cells, but they're individual living conscious cells that have their own frequency, their own energy, right? And they're working together to create this vessel called a human body, so our soul can have this physical experience. So cells are everything, right? Until you break it down into the waves, the energy waves, which is what we really are, or what we're attached to. But that's fascinating. So, and I believe you use rapé prior to,
we do rapé before the ceremony,
which is
yes,
tobacco for you guys out there. It's tobacco. So you just
it's a
shoot some
little
tobacco
Amazonian,
up the nose.
and that we call that Kambo primer, because it kind of gets the herbs and the smells and feelings and ash and vines from the jungle, puts it in your body, and it's kind of like the frog has a place to go. It's like, oh, this is home. And then as I learned from the tradition, I did this for many years just this way.
Yeah.
And then it was actually during a ceremony many years later, because I was also taught another tradition. I carry many altars and many traditions from what I learned. A ceremony, I've learned the mushroom tradition from my Mexica ancestry. And the Mayans in the ancient times also used the mushrooms. There are a few traditions on planet Earth that use the mushrooms. Now, one day during a ceremony, it was like the spirits talked to me. It's like, hey, we need to work together, because the body's now clean, right, from the Kambo. We've just cleaned out epigenetically. It's one of the only things that gets in there and works with ancestral trauma. And now the mushrooms want to come in, because what they do is restructure, reorganize, rebuild neural pathways around all of this new stuff that's happening. And that is one of the most powerful combinations of cleansing detoxes. And I'm a huge, I don't like when people I've heard people, I did ayahuasca, we did some mushrooms, and we did some common, and they throw all these things together on kind of sometimes in one ceremony. I'm like, don't do that. Oh, we make some ketamine with this and that. I'm like, no. However, with the Kambo cleanse and being separate, you finish that, we take a day where you rest, and then we go into the ceremony and we prepare the original instructions that come from the mushroom, what we call Theta no Nakats, translated body of creator, or little god people, or fruit of the gods. That's when they come in and rewire us to remember what we're actually doing here with this kind of advanced interstellar planetary information that helps us rewire, so that we can leave with this cleansed, healthier perspective and say, hey, let's start doing this, because that's kind of what we need to do now.
So I'm going
to
I'm going to show up there September 24th, my wife and I and some few other people and you. And I'm going to go through this fire ceremony. I'm going to go through the 3 days of the Kambo purge and reset and detox, and then take a day of rest, and then do the mushroom ceremony. What happens to person A that showed up, on the 23rd, and the person 6 days later? What happens?
One thing that happens is you have this opportunity to realize that if you imagine a monitor like a TV set with 30 channels, or now we have hundreds of channels, you realize, one, I've been stuck on Channel 7 watching reruns from the 70s. And that's what I think reality is.
Yeah.
And now you have access to lots more channels, just as a consciousness, as being with your cells, getting to meet your cells, getting to meet the medicines. The experience with the people usually is super transformative. The people act differently and behave differently. And we've opened doors for the next phase. A lot of times the healings are sometimes the miracle of these things. We watch stage 4 cancer disappear. We watch this disappear. We watch the anxiety go away. We watch the depression that has been uncurable for 30 years suddenly be like, I don't have this anymore. Actually, a man's coming in a few days to this retreat who had 35-year diagnosed uncurable depression, spent 7 days with me, and shit, but stuff had to shift. And he was like, he couldn't go to work. He wanted to stay at his property by the beach. He's like, I don't know what's wrong with me, Raven. I just want to hang out by the beach and be in the forest. I've never done that before. I usually come here to hunt. I don't want to hunt. I just want to be here. I'm freaking out. Chill out. Just stay in the forest as long as you can go back to work when you're ready. Take some time off. You've worked for 30 years. Let the depression, the anxiety leave your body. But you become a potentialized vessel for dumping all of this shit you've been carrying for. So they have a word for it. They call it panema in the jungle.
All right, I'm going to stop you right there. I have a dear friend dealing with cancer right now. He's too sick to come to this. Otherwise, I'd love to have him here. I know he could heal himself. I have another dear friend just reached out to me 2 days ago, super depressed. It's going to try to make it here. So for you, anybody out there right now dealing with any sort of illness, especially depression, anxiety, cancer, heart disease in my case, I really encourage you.
Autoimmune issues are great.
Autoimmune, which a lot of people are dealing with that right now. Probably long COVID's out there, all this other stuff. If you want to detox the body, listen, illness starts with inflammation. Inflammation starts with toxicity. You remove the toxicity, the inflammation goes away, and you're strong and healthy. So if you want to come to this, you arrive September 23rd, or we start on September 24th. You can come a day early and just chill. Enjoy Mountains of Hope. It's a beautiful place in Colombia. We'll start on the 23rd, which is a Sunday. We'll do the fire ceremony, 3 days of Kambo. We'll take a day off. We'll do the mushroom. If you want to reset and transform, we were selling this for $3,900. I'm going to drop it to $2,500. Okay, we only got a few more slots available. I'm doing that because you got to buy your ticket and you have to get here. We're a 3-hour flight from Miami. Once you arrive in Miami or in Medellin, we pick you up. It's only a 15-minute drive. If you want to transform your life and take your life to another level, I encourage you to come check this out. Raven is more than trained. He's been doing this, like he said, for decades, seeing miraculous things happen at all these retreats. So we invite you to consider it. And if you can make it to this, we'd love to share it with you. So, Raven, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. Look forward to seeing you in about 10 days, and I look forward to doing this with you.
That's what I might be. Thank you so much. This has been a great chat. Let's do more.
All right. See you later, buddy. Ciao.
Thank you for listening to The Power of Your Voice with Mike Murphy. This podcast is brought to you by Mike Murphy Unfiltered, The Creation Frequency, Mountains of Hope, and the Love from Margot Foundation. These sponsors are dedicated to helping you use your full potential and live a life of joy and abundance. If you enjoyed this episode, please visit our website at mountainsofhope.com and subscribe to our podcast.